Hello and welcome to the Rebecca Page Sweater Cape Sew Along, where you learn how to make a really fun and comfortable and functional sweater cape just like the one I'm wearing. So I had so much fun making this sweater cape. I did some color blocking along the bands and the sleeves. I made this one before I did this sew along series. So the one that we make together will actually just be solid fabric. Well, not solid exactly, but one color of fabric, I should say, so that it'll be easy for you to follow. And then from there, after you've made one, you'll want to make these in like every color, I promise. I know Rebecca has like 4 or 5 in her closet that she just rotates through because she loves this pattern so much. So it's my pleasure to sew this one along with you. If you are new to knit fabrics, this is the perfect little intro to knits that you're gonna have. You don't have to have a serger in order to make this sweater cape, but it will make your life significantly easier. For the sew along, you'll notice I primarily use my serger just because it is the easiest. But if you have just a regular sewing machine with some ballpoint needles and a zigzag stitch, you are good to go. That's all you need in order to make a really fun knit sweater cape. And you won't fear knits, sewing with knits, working with knits after you make this. You're gonna love knits and see how easy they are to work with. And you'll really love this pattern. So let's jump in and get started making a sweater cape that you will love. Hello, let's get started with the sweater cape sew along. So this option that I'm going to be making with the lovely little animal print fabric here is going to be the sleeved option. So I will walk you through how to make this, and hopefully you will love it. So what you want to do is make sure you get started and cut out all of your fabric pieces. You will need 60-inch wide fabric, depending on your size from the sizing chart. You may need anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 yards of 60 wide fabric, just based on the options that you are making with or without sleeves there and the size that you are making. But this pattern is super easy to sew. I think you're really going to love how easy it is to make and how easy it is to feed through a serger if you have a serger. If you have a regular sewing machine, you're by all means welcome to sew along with us here, but I will be primarily using my serger for this sew along video because it finishes my seams as well as sews the seams together. So the serger is a really awesome instrument here. So in addition to all of your pieces being cut out and ready to go, if you're doing the button option, you may want to find 2-inch or about like 1.5-inch buttons. So these are going to be like really big coating types of buttons. If you're doing the button option, you'll need 4 of them. And then you may also want to do a clear elastic. 2 yards or less are sufficient for all of your sizes. The clear elastic helps keep your seams from spreading out. And it's just a really nice way of keeping everything together nicely. If you are sewing with your sewing machine, your regular machine, not your serger, you'll just want to make sure that you have a ballpoint needle. Now, a ballpoint needle is super helpful for sewing knits, jerseys, all kinds of different fabrics of different weights, but primarily fabrics that have some stretch content in them. So I would highly recommend if you've been using like an all-purpose sewing needle or something similar in your machine that you just swap that baby out, put in a ballpoint needle, and you'll get some really amazing results with that ballpoint needle. It will definitely help you because it has a slightly rounded tip. It prevents damaging the fibers, and it really just gets in there and gets things stitched together nice and neat. Also, I'd recommend using a stretch stitch if you're using your regular sewing machine. So if you're not super familiar with sewing with knit fabrics, that's quite all right. This sew along is for beginners, so no need to worry about that. You can sew with a stretch stitch in your machine. That's usually like a short or a narrow zigzag, lightning bolt stitch, something like that. Some machines actually say this is the one we recommend for using this, like for stretch fabrics. Whatever you do, go ahead and make sure you read your sewing machine manual right now and just check to see what is recommended with your particular machine for stretch fabrics. But I do know that you can't go wrong with a zigzag. And the zigzag is super helpful because it actually helps stretch with the wear of the garment. So that's why we recommend zigzagging when you're using a sewing machine. You also may want to just test your scrap. Take a scrap of this fabric that you've cut for this sew along today, and just test a swatch. Test that you've got your tension right, that it's not puckering, or that the stitches aren't like super loose in the bottom. It's always great to just test your stitch length and tension. Make sure everything looks great. And if your fabric is really thick, like I know with this sweater cape, you can use a ton of different types of fabric. You pretty much use any stretch knit fabric that has 2 or even 4 ways stretch. So you might end up with something that's a little bit lighter weight, like maybe kind of light to medium weight French terry, or maybe perhaps you'll end up with something really bulky, like a really chunky sweater knit. So, just depending on what you are sewing, you may want to use a walking foot if your machine comes with a walking foot. Many sewing machines do come with walking feet nowadays, which you can easily just turn on, put on your machine, flip out the normal presser foot and swap it out there. You can also usually buy an add-on walking foot, and I will show you just so you can kind of see what a walking foot looks like. I'm not going to use it because I'm going to use my serger, as I mentioned, but this is what my walking foot looks like. It's got these like little teeth that kind of walk as you sew. So it helps feed the fabric. It's got another set of feed dogs essentially built into it. So it helps feed your fabric through your machine, in addition to the feed dogs that are built into your machine. And that's why walking feet are great for things that are really thick. Fun little story I've got here for you. I was sewing a really thick jacket earlier this year, and I was struggling so much. I was getting really frustrated, and I was like literally about to go out, and I was considering buying a heavy duty sewing machine, which is a little bit crazy when you stop and think about it. But I was very frustrated. I was so frustrated. So what I ended up doing was researching my particular machine, and everything that I could find was saying, this machine is perfect for coating, for heavy duty fabrics, for leather, for all the really thick things that, you might be wanting to sew. But we recommend using a walking foot. And then it just had this nice little reminder that particular sewing machine that I have a Singer sewing machine. It's a Quantum Stylist, but it was recommending that I use my walking foot. So for the first time since I've owned this sewing machine, which is a few years now, I pulled out my walking foot. I put it into my machine, and I was blown away by how much easier it was to navigate that really thick coating project that I was working on. So walking feet, like seriously, don't discredit them. Don't forget about them, because they are super, super helpful if you're sewing anything slightly bulky. So, if your sweater cape fabric is thick, then pull out that walking foot, or consider ordering one for your machine if you don't already have one. That's just my little tale for you today. Those are just some really fun things. A couple other fun little notes before we get started with this sew along and we start getting sewing is just a note about finishing seams. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be primarily sewing with my serger because I just love sewing with it, with knit fabrics and knit projects. But because your knits ordinarily don't fray, you don't have to finish your seams. So, if you are looking for a more polished and durable look, you may want to do an overcasting stitch or a zigzagging stitch on your raw edges, but you absolutely don't have to. You don't have to do that because you probably won't even notice a fray from these knit fabrics. But if you want to, by all means, finish them because it will give you a slight edge. It will make your projects look more professional. And that's why I love using the serger for knits. So hopefully that was a conclusive overview of what all you're going to be doing here during this sew along. If you have clips or pins, you'll want to grab them. I am going to primarily be using clips for this project just because I do believe that clips are wonderful for when you're sewing with knits. They just keep everything nice and in place, especially when you're connecting bands and stuff. And this project is all about hembands. You may have noticed when you were cutting your pattern pieces that, we've got a neck band, we've got a back hemband, we've got a front hemband. We've just got hembands galore, which is wonderful if you hate hemming. I mean, sometimes I really hate hemming and it's not my friend. So there is like almost no hemming, I think, involved in this sweater cape. So if you hate hemming, you are definitely making the right project for yourself. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started.